Welcome to Dwell on These Things, a podcast of Dwell Community Church in Columbus, Ohio, where we discuss whatever is honorable, pure, lovely, commendable, excellent, and praiseworthy.
All right, well, let's get started. My name is Scott Risley, and I'll be our host for this episode. I'm one of the elders, sphere leaders, pastors here at Dwell Community Church, and today we have a special treat. We have Mateo Williamson and Brian Adams, who recently became division coordinators at Dwell, and we just thought it would be good to talk with these guys, help you guys to get to know a little bit about who they are, what they do, what's a division coordinator, and how does that relate to the spiritual work that we have going on here. One of the things about an organization like this is it's a very large organization, and there's a lot of functional, practical aspects, and there's also spiritual aspects, and these guys, part of their job is to help both of those things happen in a way that we're able to allow God to work here. So I think it might be good just to start with each of you guys introducing yourselves, telling us a little bit about how you came to Christ, how you ended up in Dwell Community Church. So I don't know if you want to start for us, Brian?
Yeah, I did not grow up a Christian. I actually was introduced to Dwell in high school, or Xenos at the time. I was reluctant to attend. I had a lot of friends who came, and I was even a little bit critical at times of people. And I kind of pushed people away and didn't really, and people stopped, inviting me out and stuff. But as I got older, the reason I came to Christ was because of my grandfather dying. He was a Christian, and it was the first time I encountered death. And I remember thinking about it, and I just never encountered something like that before. And I got a conviction that I now realize was from God, that if there's a next life, I really need to invest in that. I feel like I had quite a bit of success in the world, but I definitely was not fulfilled, and I felt like I was looking for something. And it's like that William James quote where it's like the greatest use of one's life is to spend it for something that will outlast it. And I felt like that was the conviction that I had from God. And not coincidentally, a couple weeks later, I got invited out to College Connection and was like, you know what, I'm going to give it a shot. So I went. And I loved it. I loved it. A couple weeks later, I went on a high school retreat. I saw the unity of the believers there when they did a communion. And I knew, I don't have this. And so right after that communion, I went and received Christ on my own. And within a couple weeks, it was like, well, that conviction said to follow God the rest of your life, invest in eternity. So I was all in. That was in 2009. And here I am today. I'm really thankful to be a part of a church that loves students and invested in me as a 17-year-old. And I'm eager to try to play that part for students who were in my position.
Mateo?
Yeah, on a similar serious note, a cute girl invited me to a home church. No, it's actually my wife now invited me to a CT meeting, and we had a class together, and I wasn't going to say no. So I ended up going. Again, like Brian, I was not a Christian before I showed up to a meeting at Dwell Community Church. And for me, it was similar. I did fine in school. I had a bunch of stuff in my life, going well. But for the couple years prior to that, I was kind of struggling with like an existential crisis of sorts, where pretty common that like several days of the week I'm going to bed and I'm just thinking to myself, what's going to happen to me when I die? What am I even? Just huge answers missing to the real questions of my life. And so when I went to home church, I remember, actually it was your home church, Scott. When we were in Genesis, we were studying through the Old Testament, and it was the first time I had heard believers in Christ studying the Bible with an attention to some of the intellectual questions that I had. And so for me, it was, people can show up to a home church, to a Bible study, not check their brains out at the door. For me, that was a huge barrier that came down. So that allowed me to experience, the awesome fellowship after the meetings, getting to see the unity of people in the group. And it was very clear that whatever was happening with the folks there was real, and I didn't have it. And so for me, that was one of the huge ways God reached me, was through the fellowship and unity of believers. So, I didn't have the right motives at the time when I first went, but, God used it, and I'm thankful for it.
Okay, so which came first, starting to date Kira or receiving Christ?
I'm happy to say it was receiving Christ. I have a shred of integrity.
And so does she, apparently.
No, it was good. I remember it was like shortly after I became a Christian, I was like, I really want to follow God. I feel like I'm getting the sense that, God is real. He's worth pursuing with my life. I'm like, I don't want to just do that for a girl. That seems like, I'm like, I know that's what I'm doing, but I'm like, something about that seems like a cop-out, man. So I was like, I'm going to not pursue this girl. I'm going to focus in on trying to learn about God. But you can have both. So I got eternal life and a wife out of it. So
Okay, yeah, that's true. You guys are both married now. You guys have families. You want to tell us a little about your families?
Yeah, man. I mean, I have an amazing wife. We've been married. We just had our 9-year anniversary about a week ago. It was just awesome. Just super thankful to God for putting us together and the different ways that we've been able to grow together. We have 2 kids with a third on the way, which is really exciting. Our family is just really fun. I love my kids. They're nearly 3, and the other one just turned 1, and they're just a blast. I love getting to spend time with them and our family together and what we've been able to build as a unit. So I feel really blessed by God for what I have.
Yeah, our son just turned 1 a couple months ago. We're really excited for him, and it's been a blast getting to do life with my wife and son. We're planning to go out west together this summer with a couple friends who are leading in the adult group. And yeah, it's just a blessing getting to enjoy the things God's given me with my wife and my son. And he's been learning to dance recently. This is not great for the podcast, but if you're listening, he waves his finger and goes, no, no, no. So yeah, it's great being a dad.
You guys have both gone through some transitions in your role here. You guys are division coordinators. A lot of people don't really maybe even know what that means. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means, what you're doing, and tell us a little bit about your transition into these roles?
Yeah, part of what we're doing as division coordinators is, you mentioned this earlier, Scott, but it's supporting the ministry through the various, administrative roles. There's also spiritual pastoral roles, but it's really how can we enable the ministry to run, and for folks like you guys who are the sphere leaders, the workers, the people in the ministry to do the spiritual weight and work while being supported on the back end by folks like us. So our job is not to gatekeep or to say, what you can and can't do and be the strict administrator, but it's more to enable the work that God's doing in different places. So in my role, I get to support things like the counseling department, the ministry teams that people all over our church are a part of, adult ministry, which is a huge part of my job. And so a lot of what I'm doing is helping individuals get the resources they need to make the ministry happen. And so, again, we want to enable what God is doing in different parts of the church. And so we're blessed to be able to help out in whatever way we can.
Yeah, I think a division coordinator in the church world is often called an executive pastor. And we have a large administrative role. We do a lot with overseeing the budget in our various divisions. Like Mateo said, it takes a lot of administrative work to run a ministry. And so we try to help oversee that and really empower people to do good ministry, to reach people for Christ. I've been surprised by how much of a pastoral role I'm also able to play. For student ministries, I oversee everything from young kids up through college ministry. So that's Oasis, Renegade, middle school ministry, high school ministry, and college, along with Calumet, Akili, and the cafe and warehouse buildings. And so a lot of our student functions, I get to oversee and help with. And it's really cool to get to sit down with, people like Quest Shannon, who runs our middle school ministry, and talk through, what are effective ministry strategies to win middle schoolers to Christ, and what are the kinds of things we can do. So I think it's a cool blend of administrative and pastoral roles where we're just really centered on how can we get the gospel out to other people. And my transition's been great. I mean, I got to sit under Joe Body and just shadow him for a year last year. I'm super thankful to get to have sat down for the entire year and just watch him, because Joe is so good at what he does. Yeah. I mean, he is just a masterful manager and division coordinator, and getting to see the way that he's patient with people, the great listener that he is, the way that he focuses on the right things. I just learned a lot just getting to observe him and see him, and I think that that's going to be really invaluable experience for trying to do my best to hold a candle to what he's been doing for the past 31 years.
Yeah, we've really benefited from both Keegan and Joe's tremendous service in their roles. Those guys have been a complete blessing to this church, and we definitely feel like there's big shoes to fill with each of those guys, and we're grateful for God calling us forward, but know that, there's a lot for us to learn and a lot for us to, carry some of the legacy that those guys brought to those roles.
Yeah, Mateo, your move into your role was a little more sudden than Brian's. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, when Keegan was diagnosed with ALS, he knew that there was going to be a transition period. I was working for Dwell beginning of 2021, and it was this past summer in 2022 that the job got posted. So when I ended up taking the position pretty closely with Keegan, really for the past 4 or 5 months, just trying to learn from him, absorb everything he's been doing over the past several years. Honestly, it's been great just getting to spend time with Keegan. Like, one of the things I knew off the bat, especially observing his time with the people he meets with, is his care, his love for the ministry, of working well with people, helping people feel understood. He was representing their interests well, which I think is really important in this role. Is you're toggling a lot of different positions, and so you need to be able to represent a lot of different needs of the church. And so I think he did a great job of that. And so it was a short amount of time, that's right, but I feel like God has provided a lot during that time. I was reading Loritz's book. He makes a point in his leadership book that you're never the man for the task, because that God has to stretch you into the task at hand. And I feel like this transition has definitely been a testament to that, where I'm like, I was talking to someone yesterday. They're like, you feel incompetent in your role? And I was like, I don't know if I'd use the word competent, but I definitely get the sense that God is behind the work that we're doing, that God is using it to stretch me, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, there's a lot of detail involved in these roles. You guys are overseeing huge budgets touching all sorts of different aspects and corners of this church. You guys have sort of moved into it together. What's it been like sort of taking on these very high-level administrative roles at the same time?
Yeah, I think that's been really cool. It's funny, we're like basically the same age. We're in similar stages of life, both becoming parents fairly recently. And I'm really thankful for that. It's super cool to learn from the older guys, like we're some of the younger people in the room or whatever, but it's really helpful to do this with another brother who is like, in the same spot as me. And it just feels like we're going to be able to figure this out together and learn together. And our roles are very similar just for student and adult ministry. So I'm really thankful for that. I'm really looking forward to get to know you even more, Mateo, and just getting to build, have that kind of sharpening relationship, hopefully for a really long time in these roles that we get to do. Yeah,
there's definitely a camaraderie of we're both kind of thrown into the ringer and we're trying to figure stuff out, and there's things we're trying to navigate, and I felt really grateful for that. Brian's also got a ton of great ideas, and so as he stepped into his role and finding different ways to use his giftings to benefit the people he's working with, I've looked over at that and been like, okay, these are great ideas. So we obviously worked really closely together during planning and budget retreat, and so that was definitely a whirlwind of a time, but I feel like we're set up to continue to work well together in the future, since kind of we've had to do that.
Yeah, we went through the ringer together.
For those of you that don't know, we do a week with all of our high-level staff every October, where we look back, we analyze what has God done over the past year. Did we meet our goals? What are our priorities and goals for next year? And then a month later, we give these guys a month to pull all of the budgets, all of the numbers together for how to try to implement, how to go from these ideas to the realities of dollars and cents and staffing and buildings. And we do another week called the budget retreat, of just going through numbers, division after division. And it's a lot for these guys to pull together. And they had some long nights, some intense work weeks, and they pulled it off brilliantly, I thought. And I'm not the only one who shares that opinion. So we're really grateful to have guys like this who are highly competent. They're not controllers, as some would say. They're really trying to implement the vision that we've got as a church for where we want to go, and we couldn't do it without guys like this. What do you guys think's been the most challenging part of the job so far, of this transition into this role?
I think for me, it's been getting to know and understand and then coach people in these various different ministries, because student is very expansive and there's many people involved in it. And I've been in the college ministry for the past 12 or 13 years, and I've been a high school leader for the past 11. And so I'm really familiar with that. Actually, before I became the division coordinator, I ran our Camp Epic for high schoolers, and so really acquainted with those ministries and felt really competent as far as understanding how they work. But stepping into this role, I was just like, I've never done kids ministry? Like, what does that even entail? Like, what does that mean? And so I've been having to learn very intensely, what does it look like to run Oasis or Renegade, or to run a successful business at the cafe. And so just understanding all of those different like ministries and what they do and how they work, and to the point of being able to coach them. I'm kind of like, Mateo, I don't know if I would say that I'm competent to do all that yet, but I feel good about having learned a lot. And I think through that challenge, I've actually been really encouraged, because God is doing amazing things through so many pockets of our church that I just like really haven't known about. But getting to be intimately involved with these ministries, I'm just like, there's so much more he's doing than what I see in my corner of what I'm doing in College High, what I was doing before. And so I've just been really encouraged to work with people in these various ministries and see the great things that they're doing for God.
Yeah, I've had a very similar experience this year. In addition to helping with adult ministry, I'm now starting to coach in adult ministry, some of our YoPro groups. And for me, it's the learning curve of learning more about adult ministry. As someone who's still in college ministry, has been a challenge, but I've been really thankful in a very similar way to get to interact with a lot of dedicated servants, individuals in adult ministry, people who are making things happen. I work really closely with Ryan Lowry and Liz Sweet, and I've been really grateful for my time with those guys. And again, just seeing the different ways that God is working through the ministries in our church. Thinking Ryan mentioned pace setters during his State of the Church update, but it's incredible the work that God's doing through the adults who are, week in, week out, sharing their faith, being hardcore servants, both at CTs, but also for various ministry teams. And so there's a lot to learn there. The learning curve's high, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to be more aware of the stuff that God's doing in our church.
So what's your vision for where you guys see God leading the ministry that's happening in these divisions that you're overseeing?
One of the things that I talked with Ryan about when I first took the job is it's very clear that in adult ministry, and I think this was talked about in a previous podcast, the demographics in our church have changed over the past couple of years, and we're seeing more folks who were traditionally in college groups now moving into the adult ministry. And so there's a huge need for helping people make that transition successful. And part of our division, part of the responsibility that we're going to carry is helping people transition from that life stage, from college and post-college into the young adult and adult world. So I feel a huge burden and weight for that. We want to help people, carry successful marriages and families, which, again, that falls under things like the marriage counseling and Prepare and Rich program that is there to support and help new couples and new marriages. And so there's so much involved in helping people navigate different life transitions. But that one especially, I think, for the health and future of our church, want to make sure to give that the attention that it needs and to get behind what God is doing there.
Yeah, it's interesting how some of the demographics have diversified, and we have a lot going on in the YoPro slice of our church, and we also have a lot going on in the older end of our church.
Yeah.
And we have really creative people working on all these fronts, and your job is to sort of help oversee, facilitate, and try to support these ministries.
That's right.
My vision for student, in a lot of ways, I just want to keep doing what we're doing. Joe's done such a great thing for the past 31 years in the role that I'm in now, and I've been telling people that it's a lot easier to keep a fire going than it is to start it. And he's got something really good going here. And for me, a lot of it is maintaining this. There's obviously always improvements that we need to make, and we're going to continue to make them year by year. But this is a great thing that we have going. We're reaching tons of students for Christ. We had 239 students receive Christ last year, which is just a remarkable work of God. And I'm super thankful that we are impacting eternity here in Dwell. I hope that we can just continue to empower people, as generations change, the needs or the desires or how God fits into people's plans for their life is going to potentially look different. I think that the things that we might need to emphasize could be different. And what I just want to do is empower students in Columbus to love God and follow him with the rest of their life. We just want to fulfill the Great Commission in any way possible. And so my vision is just that I hope that in any way I can contribute to people coming to Christ and giving their life to Jesus and replicating themselves in discipleship. I just want to do anything to make that happen and to help people see how awesome it is to follow God.
Yeah. Favorite part so far?
I think for me, the best part has been getting to know the managers of these various ministries. So every, Oasis, Renegade, so on and so forth, they all have a director. And it's been great to get to know these guys and build relationships with them. That's one of the best parts about ministry is just getting to build friendships. And I've gotten to interact with people I never would have known, like Bob Fisher is a guy that he runs Renegade. I never would have known Bob outside of this job. We're just, in terms of life situations, in completely different stages, but I love that dude, man. He is so fun and he's so good at what he does, loving kids and Renegade. And I love getting to spend time with people like him. Guys like Nathan Schultz and Quest Shannon are more in my situation, and I get to just build friendships with them, learn how to be parents together, talk through ministry situations together. So I've just loved getting to build friendships with them, go through life together, and try to figure out how to do the best job we can to serve God together.
Yeah, honestly, for me, in a similar way, it's I've gotten a chance to work with a lot of the different ministry teams here at Dwell, and getting to see just the different ways God has given people burdens to meet very tangible needs across the city. Again, things that I was not aware of before taking on this role, but I've been able to meet with different people who are trying new things. One thing that has been really cool is even just talking with Brett McCallum, who's trying to help get together some stuff for folks who are outside of prison to be able to meet the needs of people who are trying to make life work outside of the prison system. There's just so many different apparent needs of people around our city. And, one of the strengths of our church is the number of dedicated servants who are looking to meet needs and who have a burden to do that and who are trying to do that in many different ways. So it's just been sweet to see all the work that our people are doing to spread the gospel, to meet needs, and to share their faith with people.
Yeah, I think it's also been cool to be able to get closer with guys like you, Scott, and the rest of the elders and sphere leaders too. Just some of you guys I had friendships with before, but to be able to work really closely together and spend time together, getting to spend time with the student sphere leaders every week, we could have a meeting all together. And I just love getting to get to know you guys on a deeper level, see your just commitment, your godliness, and it's something that spurs me forward. And so I just think that too. It's just been a real big joy to work closely with you guys and see just how awesome, you all are and the great things that God is doing in your guys' life and through you guys in ministry. And I feel really fortunate to get that privilege. I feel like it's very sharpening for me too.
Yeah.
So both of you guys come from different backgrounds. Both of you guys have a minority background. Mm-hmm. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how that has shaped your experiences in this church, your perspective on things, if at all.
Yeah. Being a black man in Ohio, it's I joined this church and I didn't feel at first, I didn't feel a whole lot about that. I was just really happy to be here and build the relationships and things like that. It was interesting. My most profound experience that I remember is when I went to my first servant team retreat. I looked around the room and there's hundreds of people on the servant team, but there were very few that were black. And I was like, wow, I want that to change. I'd love to see more black people in our church become leaders, because I know many are involved, and that's grown over the years, and I'm really thankful for that. And so I think that's one of my big burdens, and maybe something a part of my vision for student ministry is I just want to see more and more people who look like me be leaders in this church. And I think that we're doing great work in that direction of discipleship. And I just hope to do whatever I can to help with that, because I would love to see more and more people from backgrounds like mine be raised up into spiritual leadership and be able to impact others. And I really hope that it would be an amazing thing if someone could look at the fact that I'm doing this, having this role in our church, and aspiring to do the same thing. I know that representation can mean a lot to people in that way, and I hope that this will empower and give people some vision of I would love to be doing something like that one day. And I'm super fortunate to God to get to do this, but I hope that can be an encouragement to some people who are in my shoes.
You're gonna pull up a picture of me, and people are gonna be like, minority background. Yeah, I'm half Brazilian. Something that I've appreciated is the diversity in our church. People from lots of different backgrounds, whether that be racial backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, people from other countries. People are excited to share the gospel with people from all over the world, and that's part of the Great Commission, is seeing people from every nation, tongue, tribe. And I'm grateful for how that's happening in our own church. grateful for the burden that people have for reaching different pockets, different cultures, different groups of people in our own city. And that doesn't happen everywhere. So it's something to be really grateful and thank God for.
And just to be clear, you're second generation immigrant.
That's right. I grew up in the U.S. My mom moved to the U.S. from Brazil.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. You've got demanding ministry jobs. You've got a lot going on in your personal lives. You've got a family. How's it been trying to balance all of that?
Oh, it's not always easy. It is always fun, at least most of the time, but it's not always easy. My favorite author is J. Oswald Sanders, and he has this excellent chapter called The Leader in Time that I often have to go back to. And one quote he has in there that just like rings in my head often is that each of us has enough time to accomplish the whole will of God for our lives. And so I know that I waste a lot of time, even in the midst of a demanding schedule, but I think that for my wife and I, as we consider our lives and maybe adding different things or taking on new roles, we try our best to just pray about, is this new decision in God's will for us or not? Because if it is, then we're confident that he's going to give us enough time to do it. And if it's not, then we shouldn't do it. We should say no to that opportunity. And so I feel really thankful that I feel like I've gotten clear direction from God on these various things. And I'm also really, really thankful for really great families and a great home church that help us a lot.
Yeah.
Like my parents spend time with our kids every week, loving them so that we can get a date night every week. We get some uninterrupted time without the kids. And they love getting to spend time with the grandparents. And my wife's parents are so awesome with our kids. And my home church, my kids know everyone in my home church. They love them. They spend time with them when we're in discipleship and stuff. So I just feel really blessed by God. I feel like I've been put in an excellent situation where people are extremely supportive, and it empowers us to do, these things kind of all coalesce together, ministry, family. It's all part of our life, following God. And I'm thankful that the people God surrounded me with have helped with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's been nice being able to do, when you're doing life together with folks, it's all of those things kind of come together. I'm thankful for my co-leaders who, as I took on this role, have been a huge support, taking on just different functional demands in our home church, people stepping up within our home church to meet needs as I've been, adjusting to this new role. Thankful for my in-laws who are in town who are able to help us out with our kids, like Brian was saying. There's just been a lot of transition in times where my wife and I have had to sit down, discuss, pray about, what are the things that are really important. There's tons of stuff that we're doing that's good, but we really want to entrust stuff to the Lord and also, focus on what's actually important and making sure that we're not neglecting real responsibilities. And so we also feel like the Lord's spoken to us on that, has given us tons of clarity to make sure that we're dialed in on the things that we need to be dialed in on, and we're cutting back where we need to. But we added a ton of weight with this new position, but we're thankful that during this period of stretching, God has provided everything we've needed to follow him and get the work done.
Mm-hmm. What do you guys do to relax? What do you do for fun?
I don't think most people would consider this relaxing, but I run. I like to run marathons.
For fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I love running. I love getting to spend time with that. I was actually a cigarette smoker for 8 years, and I've bounced out of that, thankfully.
How long?
It's been 4 years now.
4 years,
that I've been
nice.
out. I've run 2 marathons, and so yeah, I love running. I find it incredibly relaxing. I run with some of my disciples. We get to spend time together, listen to audiobooks, and I love the challenge. I just love getting to do something. But besides that, I watch the football. I commiserate about the Browns, the typical.
Browns fan.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Maybe next year.
There's always next year.
That's right. I love cooking. It's not quite as healthy as running. But yeah, I love finding new recipes, trying new things, cooking. It's been something that I've been into for years, and I'm the head chef at the home, so it's always good to find new recipes to cook for my family.
I've had some of Mateo's Brazilian food, and it is incredible.
What has been the most helpful piece of advice you've received as you've moved into this role?
You mentioned the budget retreat earlier. I got some time with Joe Body to ask him some questions, and one thing I asked is, okay, Joe, what is the most important thing I can learn as a division coordinator? If there's one thing I can think about, for the years to come, what is it that I need to remember? He looks at me and he goes, cut 5%. Cut 5% of the budget. But actually, later that week, I was talking to him and his wife, Cindy, and one of the things that Joe had said was, there's a lot coming at you in this position. There's a lot of things. It's demanding, and yet you have to make sure to make time for the things that are most important, not neglecting your marriage, your children, your personal ministry. It's like we're talking about, it's a difficult balance, and yet it requires being intentional and going to God and being able to focus on the things that are important. And so that stuck with me since I started, is I want to make sure that, that I'm serving the church well and doing a good job. And at the same time, that cannot come at the expense of my family, of my inner life, of the life that I have with people in my home church. And so I want to make sure to give all those things the attention that they need.
Yeah, I spent bi-weekly time with Joe, just us two, over this last year and really for several years now. And as I've transitioned to this role, the most helpful piece of advice he gave me is something that I don't know if it was ever said just explicitly, but you'd think that we would talk about, how to be a good manager or how to run finances or whatever. But in our time together, we read Dennis's book, Christian Parenting, and we spent a lot of time talking about marriage, talking about kids. And I think that what he modeled to me and the most helpful piece of advice I got, similar to Mateo, is prioritize your family. Love them. Don't let them get lost in the midst of all this work that you have to do. And so he really discipled me into being a good parent and into being a good husband. And I really appreciate that he put an emphasis on that, an emphasis on getting good time with God. And so I feel really good about the fact that that's been kind of built into the job. It was a huge priority for him, and something that was modeled to me. And so, I'm trying to do everything I can to keep work at work. Ministry never stops. There's always things to do, but he's really showed me I need to love my family. I need to love my kids. I need to get good time with God, and I'm trying to make sure that I do that every day.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to thank Brian and Mateo for being here. I'd like to thank you all for tuning into this episode of Dwell on These Things. And for more episodes of this podcast, Bible teachings, information, you can check out our website at dwellcc.org.